Hey, Chelsea, thank you so much for celebrating the 22nd Happiness Happens month with us. It's probably almost as old as you are, but
Yeah.
it's, we've been around a while.
That's
So I want
amazing.
to thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
And
for
also,
having me. I'm excited.
your new book just came out called Inexplicable. Okay, and now I'm speaking Texan. It's funny, we're talking Texan. Inexplicably Me. And we'll talk about this in just a second. But again, thank you. And I asked you here today, our common publisher, HCI, Lindsay, suggested that you might have a great story about when you felt joyful, which is one of our 31 types of happiness. So I asked you today to share that. So that's going to be my first question, and then I'll have a couple more.
Definitely. Well, I'm so excited and thank you for having me. I love anything having to do with joy. I tend to think of myself as a pretty joyful person, and I'm of the belief that joy is this incredible undercurrent that's always available to us that we can choose to tap into. And so it may not be a big story, but I feel like that's kind of the amazing, joyful moments are the ones that are not so remarkable. But I was sitting at dinner with my husband the other night. He said, we were at home, I was making dinner, and in the middle of me making dinner, he's like, let's go on date night. We never do date night anymore. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. Let's go have date night. And so I finished cooking. We made that our lunch for the next day, and we left and we went and we were sitting at dinner, and there was live music playing, and I was so present and in the moment. And my joyful moments, I call them like my tingly heart moments. And I could literally feel my heart just tingle. And that overwhelming feeling of I am so here with this man that I love so much. And it is a seemingly unremarkable moment, but it filled me with so much joy. And I had that moment where I really went, oh, you know what? I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember sitting here at this restaurant, listening to this live music. And it's that warm, fuzzy feeling, which sounds really cheesy, but I think it's the only way to really describe joy. But that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when that undercurrent really takes over, and it's no longer just the simmer, but it starts to boil and bubble. And then I get all the happy tears, the joyful tears going. But that to me is a simple, joyful moment. Yeah.
Well, see, I think joy, so we have 31 types of happiness, and I think joy is one of those high vibration types. So I love that you described it when your heart was tingling, because it sort of becomes bigger than you. It's
Yeah.
it's this bigger moment. And sort of unfortunately, we've trained people to look for those kinds of things in like when somebody hands you a new baby, or when somebody hands you a puppy, or when somebody hands you, and you're like, oh, I'm in this huge state of joy. But sometimes you can actually just be in joy being with a person you love and having this special fun moment, because date nights were kind of sparse during the past couple of years for everybody. And so I just love that you actually were spontaneous and just said, when he said, let's do date night, you weren't like, oh, I'm already cooking dinner. You were like, oh, it's lunch tomorrow, we'll go have fun. And then you were so present for that joy. So anybody listening to this, I challenge you today to pay attention to your heart and listen to if it's giving you and your whole body just some extra energy, because you may be having one of those joy moments with your kids, or watching a flower, or playing with your pets, or talking to a friend, or just being. So thank you for that story. It's lovely. So okay, second question. Your new book, Inexplicably Me, was recently released. So would you like to share a little bit of how, when our listeners might read this, how that's going to maybe either give them some joy or other types of happiness, because you've got all sorts of things here that I think help people feel good. And that's sort of how I define happiness. It's when you feel naturally good, which sometimes it's just a little bit better than you felt before. So if you've been with a crying baby and you finally get the baby to go to sleep and you have relief, you're feeling better, because you're like, okay, my little angel is not upset right now, and I can feel relief for that, and happiness. So sometimes, like I said, it depends on the moment you were in, but you had some big moments as your subtitle, so I'll let you share that.
Oh, yes. So, my book, Inexplicably Me, a story of labels, worthiness, and refusing to be boxed in. I tend to be a very joyful person. I love joy. I love talking about joy. I love being joyful. But what I found is that joy is very much internal. Joy is something that we have access to all the time. And my book, I've been trying to find the past tense of strive. I've really worked to find ways that we can go inside and start to accept ourselves as a mean of going out into the world and accepting others. My book is a memoir about my story of growing up with two gay dads who I'm biologically related to, and they have certainly brought me a lot of joy. But they've also taught me how to tap in to that undercurrent of joy in moments of appreciation, in moments of gratitude, in moments of being present. And so my book has a lot of those little nuggets about how we can start to love and accept ourselves and tap into that inner joy so that we can bring that joy out into the world. And I think the more joy, like you mentioned, it's a high vibration energy, that feeling of when you're around a joyful person, you also start to feel joyful, even if you feel like you've been in a lower vibe place. And so hopefully my book has some of those nuggets that can help really have us all feeling and reaching in and grabbing onto that joy more often than we have been.
Because happiness, regardless of which of the 31 types, it is actually contagious. Just like hanging out with, I like to call them the chronically cranky. I usually put mental health issues in a different, they're in a different category because they're like any other health challenge. It's something you have to manage. But we do have this group of people that don't have ongoing mental health issues that just don't want to be happy. And so I think of them as the chronically cranky. But honestly, even if you're smiling at that person, or just like you're in that super joyful state, not when you're trying to share it, because then they get their little energy filled up to repel it. But if you just are just you, it
Mhm.
actually does sometimes, like I said, takes them up just a little bit, just a tiny bit,
Mhm.
not a lot, but just a tiny bit. So, in my book, Practical Happiness, it's 4 principles to improve your life. So, the first principle is happiness is personal. And we live in this world of groupthink. Now, sometimes groupthink works great when it comes to picking a movie or a book or something, but you still may like one of those things that no one else does. Like, I have an old classic that I just like to watch over and over, and some people are like, this is horrible. And I'm like, but it just makes me laugh. The lines in it just make me laugh, and I don't care if you don't like it. I mean, you don't have to watch it with me. Go
Yeah.
watch something else, but that's fine. Like, I'm not asking you to share my joy that's not joyful to you. But it is important to know what your happiness is personal is. So, what's something that makes you personally happy that might or might not make your spouse, your parents, your friends happy, or anybody on social media happy? It's just kind of your thing. But like, when I do this, I know it's going to make me smile, 9 out of 10 times.
Absolutely. So I had two things that popped into my mind. They're really simple things, really small. And it's so funny that for me, it's truly a cup of Earl Grey tea with just a little honey and just a little milk. And I think it's more about the fact that it's a ritual for me, that I take the time to go and sit in my backyard with my cup of tea. And I know without a doubt it will turn my day around. Because I think it has nothing to do with the tea or the backyard, but the fact that I'm taking time to take care of myself, the fact that I'm going, okay, this is my ritual that I know makes me happy, that I know is for no one else but me. And so for me, that moment of just being with my tea is something that I tap into. It's something I did whenever I do something challenging or that pushes me, where I feel drained afterwards. I go for my cup of tea to sit and really be with it and be present. And that is one major thing that always makes me happy, that I don't know if everybody would get that. And the other for me is there's a dividing line for me, the last walk of the day with my dog that I give at the end of the workday and before I move into the afternoon. For me, that is my time where I switch perspectives, especially having worked from home for so long. Now I'm back in and out of an office, but when you're home all the time and there's not a lot of division between your morning, your afternoon, your evening, and I want to switch that flip and stop working, that walk with my dog, it's only 20 minutes, but it's a beautiful time of day. We're in California, so it's cooled down a little bit by that time. And it's just such a lovely time to be out in the neighborhood, and always puts a smile on my face. Even if I don't feel like going, it always ends up making me happy. Yeah.
I love that. And I noticed that a common denominator with both of them had to do with you were in nature, which does scientifically make us happier, whether we, really acknowledge that or not. Like just even walking, putting your feet on the grass and the dirt is a grounding piece that chemically creates
Amazing.
a lot of little happiness. So that's interesting of your two happinesses personals. They have that outdoor component. I'm not an outdoor girl, but I know when I go do those things,
Yeah.
I spend time outdoors, and I now do it intentionally. I now, like, if I'm in my mind's just racing and I just will go stand outside for like 5 minutes, even though it's a heat wave here now, but I'll just go stand under the tree and talk to the tree for 5 minutes. And I find that that's brings a lot of happiness. So thank you for sharing those things. Again, readers, she's actually she's doing some book signings. So go to her website, because, if you can go see her and meet her, you're going to just feel good. I can tell by feeling her vibration. So thank you so much, Chelsea. And I hope you have a wonderful Happiness Happens month.
Thank you, Pamela. And thank you so much for having me. And yay, I'm wishing everyone a lot of happy.